This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. My name is Janice Pons. I'm the host on our podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truths. Listen, we're going to dive in. We got a lot. The closer it gets to the election this year, the more we've got to dissect. I really want us to understand dynamics that are going on in our nation that a lot of people just don't understand. And so they run off of emotions because they don't understand dynamics. But I like dissecting this stuff because it's exciting, because it helps you to understand, and it keeps you out of emotionality and ignorance. And ignorance simply means lacking knowledge in a particular area or matter. And God doesn't want us ignorant. I don't want us ignorant. I used to be ignorant. I didn't understand facts, and I just ran off of emotions. And because I was around people that did that, and we don't have to do that anymore. So we're going to continue to pray for our nation. There's our flag behind us. I love our flag. And our presidential seal is to remind us. It's a visual to remind us to keep our president, his family, the executive branch, and all of those members of the cabinet, the executive cabinet, and their families lifted up in prayer, and all of the nation, and definitely the ones that were living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet, guys. Yes, yes, yes. So tonight, about understanding our nation, we're going to examine something that's generated discussion in our nation: inheriting mayhem. Some people don't even acknowledge what President Trump walked into. And they just blast that man. Why do I talk about these? People don't think about it. And they don't know it because the news, the mainstream media doesn't want you to know it. I want you to know it. I want us to know it, because then people go, oh, I hear that all the time. Thank you for talking about that. These reels that I'm doing, REELS, they're just taking off. Thousands and thousands of shares. Because why? People, the Holy Spirit will say something to me. He'll go bam, bam, bam. He'll say, make a video. And I'll get on there real quick, and they just take off. People are getting understanding, and they're sharing it. And I thank you for that. Now, we're going to look at the dynamics of inheriting mayhem. And it's probably going to get more, if there's such a word, mayhemic. It's going to be more manifestations of mayhem that are going to heat up as we get closer and closer to the election. Listen, guys, there are people on Capitol Hill. They simply do not want America to be first. And the moment I just said that, those people in the squad, Miss Tlaib, Miss AOC, Jasmine Crockett, she lost the election, but she'll be there till January. The Al Greens, the Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer's, guys, they have a different agenda than America being first. Guys, bottom line, let me just clear it all up for you. This will just seal it. The Democratic Party's gravy train has been disrupted. The fraudulent scams and the money laundering fronts, where billions upon billions of dollars were being abused and squandered in just Minnesota alone, related to the Somalians, and they were wiring that money over to Africa. That's been shut down. The wiring of the money, they would have these fronts set up, daycare fronts, shell companies, home health care, COVID-19 feeding programs, no services provided. But they got contract upon contracts, billions upon billions of dollars. And it was not making America first. We were paying for them. So they were getting over on us like a fat rat and sending it to Africa. And there are people that don't want that to stop, but it's been stopped. And so you had the squad going over to this Pan-American Congress last year and saying that capitalism is a virus and needed to be destroyed. That's what makes our nation prosper. That's what's going to happen through the Trump accounts starting in July with our children. That they're going to have an IRA type account that's going to start producing money right away. Guys, it's a life changer. It's a game changer. I did a podcast on the Trump accounts. It's amazing. We are in a literal battle for the survival of our nation. And there are people that do not want America to be first. All this ties into, we're talking about inheriting mayhem. And all this is going to tie into our clinical perspective, which is establishing order. Establishing order. Guys, the Biden administration's border disaster left behind 1.6 million illegal aliens with final deportation orders and half with criminal convictions. Think about that. This reveals a staggering backlog. Now, we're talking about understanding what President Trump has walked into. Y'all need to know this kind of stuff. You sit up and bash the man, you don't even understand what's going on. What I just said about the Biden administration, what they left behind, 1.6 million illegal aliens that had final deportation orders. Half of them were criminal convictions now, already established. So President Trump comes in, and there was a staggering backlog that his administration has been confronted with as Democrats continue obstructing enforcement efforts. They're obstructing the efforts. Now, here are the dynamics that the administration's dealing with. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons testified that 1.6 million illegal aliens have final. He testified in Congress that 1.6 million that are people who are here illegally have final deportation orders or orders already there, including 800,000 that have criminal convictions. Did you know that? That's what President Trump's dealing with. We have no clue what that man has to contend with, guys. Pray for him. Let me finish. These court issued orders accumulated under the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal when daily illegal crossings peaked at 10,000 people a day, overwhelming the immigration system that was willfully perpetrated upon us, never been seen before. ICE arrested nearly 400,000 individuals during President Trump's first year back while facing riots, defund threats, and judicial interference from the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal through Obama and Biden's appointed judges. New polling shows that 73% of Americans, guys, support deporting criminal aliens, and 67% want local authorities cooperating with federal immigration enforcement. That many Americans want this. But let me tell you what happened during the Senate hearings. Now, so we've already spoken with our vote. We had a GOP trifecta, and then we have these judges, Obama, Biden, Harris, cabal, appointed judges interfering. We're talking about inheriting mayhem in our clinical perspective. Will be about establishing order. During Senate hearings, it was revealed that during Senate Homeland Security Committee testimony, that approximately, like I said, the 1.6 million illegal immigrants remain in the United States already with final deportation orders issued by immigration judges. It was Senator James Lankford. He did a lot of questioning with the acting director of ICE about the backlog, which included roughly about 800,000 individuals with criminal convictions, not awaiting trial. I mean, they were just convicted. We got some of them out of prison, guys. I keep saying it. Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. A lot of people do not know about that at all. Now, remember, these people were willfully brought in here at the count of 10,000 a day. That dynamic was going on, I think it was 2023. They were rushing, they were ramrodding them in here. These orders originated from the Executive Office for Immigration Review under the Department of Justice, not from ICE directly. Minnesota alone accounts for, I think it was 16,840 such orders, a figure highlighted amid recent tensions in that state where anti-ICE riots resulted in activist deaths. The staggering numbers underscore the chaos created during the Biden years, the Obama, Biden, Harris cabal. And it went to a whole other level when the ones being propped up were Obama was working behind the scenes, but the ones being propped up were Biden and Harris, cackling Harris. Empty suit, cackling Harris. The staggering numbers underscore the chaos that was created, willfully created during the Biden years when illegal border crossings reached 10,000 in one day at their peak it was 2024. It wasn't 2023. It reached that peak in 2024. It was getting wild in 2023, but 10,000 a day, guys, that is crazy. Did you hear me? 10,000 a day. Do you see the willful chaos that was perpetrated upon us? The previous administration released 70,000 special interest aliens with potential terrorism ties without proper vetting, compounding security risk. Guys, who does stuff like that? 70,000 special interest aliens. Just loose them out on the streets. And you think that Christian conservative constitutionalists are crazy when we call this stuff out. This backlog represents individuals who went through full immigration court proceedings, received final removal orders from judges, yet they remained in the country due to inadequate enforcement priorities under the Obama, Biden, Harris cabal. Guys, these people from the pit of hell. And so can you see how they have willfully orchestrated all this stuff to try to make President Trump look like a fool? But they were the ones that perpetrated all that stuff. And he's coming in trying to straighten it out, getting these criminals out of here. The Trump administration inherited A system overwhelmed by unprecedented illegal immigration, leaving American communities vulnerable to criminal aliens who should have been removed years ago. We're talking about walking into mayhem. Recent polling data confirms Americans strongly support President Trump's enforcement priorities, with 73%, like I said earlier, backing him. They back the deportations of criminal, illegal aliens, and 67% want local authorities to cooperate. But you have Democrats that are trying to keep this from happening. These numbers expose the total disconnect between Democratic politicians pushing sanctuary policies and ordinary citizens concerned about public safety. Guys, they need to shut them all down. The sanctuary cities, shut them all down. They're havens. They're cesspools for crime. When James Langford was intensely questioning the acting director of ICE, he praised ICE officers for working by the book to restore order after years of chaos, while criticizing protesters who obstruct the enforcement efforts. The data, guys, I love synthesizing and integrating data. I camp out at that kind of stuff. See, that's what I look at instead of the news. I don't pay attention to the news. I might catch snippets and bits and pieces over posts, and I might research something, but I don't sit in front of the TV looking at news. They're liars. They all have the same talking points. I look at data, analyze, synthesize, integrate data, and I come over here and talk about it. The data reveals that 60% of Americans believe Democrats encourage resistance to federal immigration law, undermining constitutional authority and endangering communities that bear the consequences of illegal immigration. Guys, on my page on Facebook, Janice Pons, pictures of all the Americans who have lost their lives, bodies accosted, totally unalived in vicious manners. Despite broad public support and clear legal authority, Trump's ICE agents faces obstruction from the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal and those appointed federal judges who issue increasingly detailed orders attempting to micromanage immigration enforcement. What was that lady's name? Susan Nelson. Judge Susan Nelson went so far as tracking UPS deliveries for detainees, while Judge Christine O'Hearn called ICE positions indefensible for allegedly defying release orders. These judicial interventions represent government overreach, guys, that hampers ICE's ability to execute lawful deportations. They're just trying to uphold the law. And they did not, ICE did not ever get this kind of resistance under the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal for any deportations that he did. No. So why would they choose just one president to act the way they have been? Do you see who you may have aligned yourself with? Do you see all the facts? Do you see the whole picture? Listen, meanwhile, ICE arrested nearly 400,000 individuals during President Trump's first year back in office when he first got in, with 229,000 classified as criminal aliens. They were criminals, already determined as such, some guilty of unaliving people, involved with violent offenses. This discrepancy highlights enforcement challenges as ICE works through massive backlog. This is what they walked into, the mayhem that they walked into, massive backlogs while confronting resistance from multiple fronts. The deportation backlog crisis illuminates the real-world consequences of open border policies that prioritized political ideology over American safety. Guys, that's been our reality. You've got people, they don't care about our safety. They have a political ideology and an agenda that took precedence over our safety. With half of the individuals holding final deportation orders, we're talking about facts, data. We synthesize. I'm sharing with you what's been synthesized and integrated, so you can see the picture of what we're really dealing with and the mayhem that our president walked into, and how he has to establish order, or we're going to lose our country. With half the individuals holding final deportation orders having criminal convictions, the Biden administration's failure, the Obama-Biden-Harris cabal's failure to enforce immigration law endangered communities nationwide. This is making sense to some of y'all finally. Share this with your friends that don't get it. And say, listen to this and use basic logic and deductive reasoning. Just hear it out. President Trump's commitment to restoring order through aggressive but lawful enforcement reflects what the overwhelming majority of Americans demand: secure borders, respect for legal processes, and protection from criminal aliens who exploit sanctuary policies. Total exploitation. The path forward requires supporting ICE officers doing their constitutionally mandated jobs while rejecting the judicial activism and democratic obstruction from the Democratic Party that enable this crisis. Guys, they set the whole thing up. They set up the orchestrated lawfare against the man. They set up the orchestrated mayhem. They set up the orchestrated chaos. They're from the pits of hell. This leads us to our absolute necessity of understanding our clinical perspective. Establishing order. Establishing order. Guys, we were all over the place. There are key components that have to be established regarding national order. What does that include? What would happen if we had security and basic services that the first priority is to stabilize a society by providing security and fulfilling basic needs like food and shelter? That's our priority. What would happen, and of Americans, what would happen if we had a legal system in governance that was upstanding and corruption-free? Establishing a constitution, a system of laws, and a recognized government being essential for maintaining order and legitimacy. They didn't even want us, they were trying to defund the police, guys. That's what the Democratic Party was about. And these communities were imploding and being taken over. What would happen? And then you had 10,000 people coming in a day. Do you see what they did to us? What would happen if we have a shared identity? Yeah, shared identity. It's not well, you're all black people. Child, we got to stick together. The black and the brown is a lie from the pit of hell. What we got to do, let's start with sticking together as American, and we can recognize cultures, Hispanic, Native American, Black American, Asian, all of it. Italian, all of it. Chinatown, all of it. Let's recognize it all. But we got to come up under the umbrella of America. That's our shared identity. Creating a sense of unity through common culture, common language, history, language, or shared ideals. This helps build the population coming together. What would happen if we had institutional frameworks? What does that mean? What does that mean? Building institutions such as law enforcement, not defunding them, and government agencies to hold the rule of law, like ICE, like law enforcement, like our National Guard coming into Washington and not having to be threatened with being ambushed. Can you imagine how asinine it is to even try to embrace that during the BLM uproar in 2020, the effort was to defund police departments? I'll just leave that right there. What would happen if we had economic structure? What would that involve? Establishing a functioning economy. God, President Trump's big on that. And where necessary, it would be necessary at times, promoting sustainable practices for a permanent population. Guys, here's something to think about. What would happen if we had key principles for being successful, such as partnerships? That's what was going on with the opportunity zones. During his first administration, we had 9,000 that had been set up in the urban and rural communities. And when the Obama, Biden, Harris cabal got back in charge, you didn't hear anything about them. All of a sudden, bringing those people in, the 10,000 people a day were in, and we were paying for their housing, their health care, their child daycare, free money card, food, education, while Americans suffered. Am I talking to anybody tonight? Are you getting understanding as we synthesize and integrate this data together? What would it look like if we established communication between people on the ground, everyday people, and government officials working together? What would happen if we had a mindset in unity as it relates to problem solving, addressing small, immediate problems, and building trust? What would happen if we focused on capacity building and investing in training and resources, particularly for our law enforcement? Guys, listen, we were all over the place. That's what we looked at. We're just looking at the mayhem that President Trump walked into. But from our clinical perspective, we're thinking about establishing order. It's easy to get caught up in emotions in terms of what was going on. They want to keep us in an emotional tailspin. They want us to stay offended, but we can't afford that as a country, guys. We're going somewhere. It's expecting us when we get there, and there are many of us who are committed. I am, and millions of us are committed to this country working. Keep coming back over here. We're going to go from destruction to dignity, clinical perspective, spiritual truths, because it's only the truth that's going to set us free. Next week, we're going to keep dissecting these things. And next week, we're going to talk about the fiasco. And we're going to talk about the will for correction. Guys, we can get things right. I'm excited about the Trump accounts that are going to take place in July. I am so thrilled about where we're going because we're going somewhere. It's expecting us when we get there. Come and go with me as we continue to synthesize, integrate, understand, and dissect these things so we can have understanding, because wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, we're going to continue to get wisdom, which is revealed truth. But in all our getting, we've got to get understanding. I'll see you next week. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.